My name is Josh Bennett. I'm 31 and live in a small apartment in downtown Denver. It's nothing fancy, but it's close to work, and I've got a decent view of the city skyline from my living room. I work as a sales manager for a tech company, a job that's demanding but pays the bills. It's been a while since I seriously thought about relationships. Life's been all about hitting targets and keeping clients happy. One weekend, after a particularly grueling quarter, I decided to hit up the Denver Music Festival. It was my way of blowing off some steam. The festival was buzzing with energy, and I was looking forward to losing myself in the music for a few days. On the second day, I was at the main stage, waiting for a band to start their set. That's when I saw her. Lily. She was standing a few feet away, swaying to the music that was playing over the speakers. She had this carefree vibe about her, like she was totally in her element. I was drawn to her immediately. I decided to strike up a conversation. "Hey, do you know this band?" asked, trying to sound casual. Lily turned and smiled. "Yeah, they're great. I've seen them a couple of times." "You?" "No, first time," I replied. "I'm Josh, by the way." "Lily," she said, shaking my hand. "Nice to meet you, Josh." We started talking, and before I knew it, we were sharing stories about our lives. She told me she was a veterinary technician and loved her job. It was refreshing to see someone so passionate about what they did. After the set, we grabbed some food and continued talking. It felt like I'd known her forever. The chemistry was undeniable. By the end of the night, we exchanged numbers and made plans to meet up again. The next day, we spent the entire day together. We explored Denver, tried out food trucks, and even stumbled upon a street performer who played the violin beautifully. It was one of those perfect days that you wish could last forever. "Do you believe in fate?" Lily asked as we sat on a bench, watching the sun set over the city. "I don't know," I replied, "but I do believe in great timing. And meeting you feels like that." She smiled and leaned her head on my shoulder. It felt right. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. As weeks turned into months, our relationship grew. We spent as much time together as we could, given our busy schedules. She introduced me to her friends, and I introduced her to mine. We talked about our dreams, our fears, and everything in between. It was a whirlwind romance, full of passion and promises about the future. One night, as we lay on the couch watching a movie, Lily turned to me with a serious look. "Josh, there's something I need to tell you," she said. I muted the TV and turned to her. "What is it?" "I got an offer for my dream job," she said, "in New York City." My heart sank a little, but I tried to stay positive. "That's amazing, Lily. I'm so proud of you. But it means we'd have to do long distance," she said, her voice wavering. "I don't want to lose what we have." Took her hand and squeezed it. "We'll make it work." "I don't want to lose you either." And just like that, we decided to give long distance a shot. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was willing to try. For her, I'd do anything. The next few months were a blur of late-night phone calls, video chats, and weekend visits. It was hard, but we managed. Or at least, I thought we did. Little did I know, the real challenges were just beginning. The first few weeks of our long-distance relationship were filled with optimism. Lily had settled into her new job in New York City, and we were determined to make it work. We called and texted constantly, sharing every detail of our lives as if we were still in the same city. I visited her whenever I could, and those weekends were the highlights of my month. But soon, the reality of the situation started to set in. My job was demanding and taking time off wasn't always possible. The time difference didn't help either. By the time I got home from work, Lily was often exhausted from her day. Our calls became shorter and the texts less frequent. One evening, after a particularly stressful day at work, I called Lily. She sounded distant. "Hey, how was your day?" asked, trying to keep the conversation light. "It was okay," she replied, but I could tell something was off. "Dan and I stayed late at the clinic. We had a tough case." There was that name again, Dan. I tried to ignore the pang of jealousy. "Sounds rough," I said, attempting to sound supportive. "Want to talk about it?" "Not really," she said, her voice flat. "I'm just tired, Josh." I could feel the distance growing, not just physically, but emotionally too. I hated this feeling. I missed her, and I felt helpless. As weeks turned into months, the strain of long distance became more apparent. We started arguing over small things, missed calls, delayed texts, and our inability to see each other as often as we wanted. The jealousy I felt towards Dan didn't help. Lily mentioned him more often, and I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more going on. One night, after a particularly heated argument over the phone, I found myself staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. I knew we needed to talk about this, but I didn't want to come off as insecure or controlling. It was a fine line to walk, and I didn't want to push her away. The next day, I decided to take a half-day off work to surprise Lily with an impromptu visit. I booked a flight to New York, hoping that some face-to-face time would help us reconnect. When I arrived at her apartment, she looked genuinely surprised and happy to see me, which eased some of my worries. We spent the weekend together, trying to recapture the magic we had when we first met. We went out for dinner, explored the city, and even had a lazy day in watching movies. It felt good, like old times, but there was still a lingering tension between us. On my last night there, as we were lying in bed, I decided to bring up Dan. "Lily, can we talk about something?" asked, turning to face her. "Sure," she said, though her expression suggested she knew what was coming. "I can't help but notice you talk about Dan a lot," I began, choosing my words carefully. "I know you work together, but is there something more going on?" Lily sighed, looking away. "Josh, I promise you, nothing has happened between us. But I won't lie. I have developed feelings for him. It's confusing, and I don't know what to do about it." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to yell, to demand why she hadn't told me sooner. Another part of me just felt sad and defeated. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked softly. "I didn't want to hurt you," she said, tears in her eyes. "I love you, Josh, but being here with you so far away, it's been hard." Took a deep breath, trying to process everything. "Lily, I love you too, but we can't ignore this. We need to figure out what's best for both of us." The next morning, I left for the airport feeling more conflicted than ever. We agreed to give each other some space and think about our next steps. As my plane took off, I couldn't help but wonder if our relationship could survive this. Back in Denver, I threw myself into work, trying to distract myself from the pain. I kept replaying our conversation in my head, questioning what I could have done differently. But I knew that if we were going to have any chance of making it, we needed to confront these issues head-on. The following weeks were a blur. Lily and I still talked, but it was different. There was a heaviness to our conversations, an unspoken tension that neither of us knew how to break. I knew we needed help, so I suggested couples therapy. "Lily, I think we should see a therapist," I said during one of our calls. "We need to work through this if we're going to move forward." She agreed, and we started looking for a therapist who could do sessions over video calls. It was a small step, but it felt like the right direction. Despite everything, I still loved her and wanted to fight for us. Through therapy, we began to unpack our issues, slowly peeling back the layers of hurt and misunderstanding. It wasn't easy, and there were many painful moments, but I felt a glimmer of hope. We were both committed to making this work, even if it meant facing some hard truths. However, the trust issues were like a persistent shadow, always lurking in the background. I knew that rebuilding what was broken would take time, patience, and a lot of effort. And even then, there were no guarantees. As we continued our journey, I realized that the road ahead would be long and uncertain. But for now, I was willing to take it one day at a time, holding on to the belief that love, despite its challenges, was worth fighting for. It had been a few months since Lily and I started couples therapy, and while some progress had been made, the trust issues still lingered. Our weekly video sessions were helping us communicate better, but the shadow of Lily's feelings for Dan was always present. It felt like we were walking on eggshells, afraid to crack the fragile peace we were trying to build. One Thursday evening, after a particularly grueling therapy session, I found myself sitting alone in my apartment, staring at the empty walls. I had just gotten off the phone with Lily. We had another argument about trust, and it left me feeling drained. I knew she was trying, but it was hard to forget the pain of her confession. I decided to go for a walk to clear my head. The cool Denver air felt refreshing, and I wandered through the familiar streets of my neighborhood, thinking about how things used to be. I missed the easy days when Lily and I were just starting out, with no complications or doubts. Now, everything seemed so complicated. As I walked, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from my best friend, Mike. "Mike, hey man, want to grab a beer? Been a while." I realized I hadn't seen Mike in weeks. I could use a distraction, so I texted back, "Josh, sure, where are you?" "Mike, meet me at O'Malley's in 20. Josh, see you there." O'Malley's was our go-to bar, a place where we could unwind and forget about our problems for a while. When I arrived, Mike was already at our usual table, 2 beers in front of him. "Hey," I said, sliding into the seat across from him. "Hey, man," Mike replied, pushing a beer towards me. "You look like you need this." "Yeah, it's been rough," I admitted, taking a long sip. We chatted about work and life for a bit, but eventually the conversation turned to Lily. "How are things with Lily?" Mike asked, his tone serious. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "It's been hard, Mike. We're in therapy, but I don't know if it's enough." Mike nodded, taking a sip of his beer. "Long distance is tough. Add trust issues to the mix, and it's a recipe for disaster. I just feel like I'm constantly fighting to keep us together," I said, frustration seeping into my voice. "And I don't even know if she's all in." "Have you told her that?" Mike asked, raising an eyebrow. I shook my head. "Not in those exact words. I don't want to push her away. Maybe it's time to have an honest conversation," Mike suggested. "You need to know where you both stand." His words stayed with me as I finished my beer. He was right. I needed to know if Lily was truly committed to making this work, or if we were just prolonging the inevitable. The next evening, I called Lily. She sounded tired, but I couldn't wait any longer. "Lily, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Okay," she replied cautiously. "What's on your mind?" I need to know if you're really committed to us, I said, the words tumbling out faster than I intended. Because I feel like I'm fighting for this alone. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing, and I imagined her sitting in her apartment, probably biting her lip like she always did when she was thinking. Josh, I am committed, she said finally, but I can't deny that this has been really hard. I'm trying, but it's not easy. I know it's not easy, I replied, my frustration bubbling to the surface. But I need more than just trying. I need to know that you're all in, that you're willing to do whatever it takes to make this work. I am, she said, her voice trembling. But I also need to be honest with you. Dan and we've been spending a lot of time together at work. Nothing has happened, but I can't deny that I have feelings for him. It's confusing, and I don't know how to handle it. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Lily, I appreciate your honesty, I said slowly, but I can't keep living with this uncertainty. It's tearing me apart. I know, she whispered. I don't want to hurt you, Josh. Maybe we need to take a step back and figure out what we really want. The idea of taking a step back felt like giving up, but maybe she was right. We were both hurting, and maybe some space would help us see things more clearly. Okay, I said finally. Let's take a break and see where we stand. When we hung up, I felt a mix of relief and sadness. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I needed to find some clarity, both for myself and for us. That weekend, threw myself into work, trying to keep my mind off Lily. But every quiet moment brought thoughts of her, and I wondered if we'd ever find our way back to each other. Only time would tell. In the weeks that followed, I focused on myself. I reconnected with friends, took up new hobbies, and tried to find joy in the little things. It wasn't easy, but I started to feel a sense of peace that had been missing for a long time. Eventually, Lily and I would have to talk again, but for now, I was content with taking things one day at a time, healing in my own way, and hoping that whatever happened, it would be for the best. Taking a break from my relationship with Lily was both a relief and a burden. I had more time to myself, but the emptiness left by her absence was palpable. I spent a lot of my days trying to distract myself with work and new hobbies. Even took up jogging, something I had never enjoyed before, but now found oddly therapeutic. One Saturday morning, while on my usual jog, I ran into Mike again. He was out walking his dog, a lively golden retriever named Max. We hadn't seen each other much since the night at O'Malley's. Hey, Josh, Mike called out, waving. Hey, Mike. How's it going? I asked, slowing down to a walk. Good, good. Max and I are just getting some exercise. How about you? How are things? He asked, his tone full of concern. I shrugged, wiping the sweat from my forehead. I'm managing. It's been tough, but I'm trying to stay busy. Have you talked to Lily at all? Mike asked, his voice gentle. I shook my head. No, not really. We decided to give each other space. I think it's what we both need right now. Mike nodded. Sometimes space is the best thing. Gives you both a chance to figure things out. We walked in silence for a few moments. The only sound was Max's panting and the crunch of gravel under our feet. Finally, Mike spoke again. Listen, Josh, I know this is hard, but you're doing the right thing by taking care of yourself. Whatever happens, you'll get through it. Thanks, Mike, I replied, grateful for his support. As the days turned into weeks, I focused on rebuilding my life without Lily. I spent more time with friends, picked up some old hobbies I had neglected, and even joined a local book club. It was nice to have a sense of community and to feel like I was part of something again. One evening, after a particularly good book club meeting, I decided to check my phone. There was a text from Lily. "Lily, hey Josh, can we talk?" My heart raced as I stared at the screen. Part of me was terrified of what she might say, but another part of me was desperate to hear her voice. Took a deep breath and replied, "Josh, sure, I'm free now. Call me." A few moments later, my phone rang. Took another deep breath and answered. "Hey, Lily," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hey, Josh," she replied, her voice soft and hesitant. "How have you been?" "I've been okay. Busy, but okay. How about you?" "Same here," she said. "I've been doing a lot of thinking." "Me too," I admitted. "What's on your mind?" There was a long pause before she spoke again. "I miss you, Josh, but I also know that we can't go back to the way things were. We need to figure out if we can move forward." "I miss you too," I said, my throat tightening. "But you're right. We need to be honest with each other about what we want." "I know," she said, her voice trembling. "I've been trying to sort out my feelings for Dan. It's been confusing. But I realize now that I need to let go of those feelings if I want to make things work with us." Her words gave me a glimmer of hope, but I knew it wasn't that simple. "Lily, I appreciate that, but we need to rebuild the trust that was broken. It's going to take time and effort from both of us." "I understand," she said. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I love you, Josh. I don't want to lose you." "I love you too, Lily," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But we need to take it one step at a time. Let's start with therapy again and see where it takes us." "Okay," she agreed. "I'm willing to try." We talked for a while longer, discussing the practicalities of our situation and how we could make it work. By the time we hung up, felt a mix of emotions: hope, fear, and uncertainty. But at least we were talking again, and that was a step in the right direction. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. We resumed our therapy sessions, this time with a renewed sense of purpose. We were both committed to making it work, but it wasn't easy. There were still moments of doubt and insecurity, but we faced them together. One evening, after a particularly intense therapy session, Lily and I had a heart-to-heart conversation. "Lily, I need to know that you're all in," I said, my voice shaking. "I can't do this if you're not fully committed." "I am, Josh," she replied, her eyes filled with determination. "I'm all in, I promise." Took her hand, squeezing it tightly. "We'll get through this, together." As we navigated the ups and downs of our relationship, I realized that love wasn't always easy or straightforward. It required effort, patience, and a willingness to face the difficult moments head-on. But despite everything, I believed that we could make it work. One day at a time, we began to rebuild our trust and strengthen our bond. It wasn't perfect, and there were still challenges ahead, but I felt hopeful for the first time in a long while. In those moments of doubt and fear, I reminded myself of why I fell in love with Lily in the first place. Her kindness, her passion, and her unwavering support. And I knew that as long as we had each other, we could overcome anything. As the days turned into weeks and then months, we continued to grow and evolve, both as individuals and as a couple. It wasn't always easy, but it was worth it. And in the end, that's all that mattered. The months that followed our decision to give it another shot were a roller coaster. Some days, it felt like we were making real progress. Other days, it felt like we were just going through the motions. Therapy helped, but the scars from Lily's betrayal ran deep. Trust wasn't something that could be easily rebuilt, no matter how much we wanted it. One particular evening, after another long day at work, I found myself sitting alone in our apartment. Lily was working late at the clinic again, and I couldn't help but feel the familiar pang of doubt gnawing at my mind. Tried to shake it off, reminding myself that she was committed to making things work, but it wasn't easy. As I sat there, my phone buzzed with a message from Mike. "Mike, hey man, wanna grab a drink? Need to talk." I hesitated for a moment before replying. "Josh, sure. O'Malley's in 30. Mike, perfect. See you there." Threw on my jacket and headed out, my mind racing. By the time I reached O'Malley's, I was a bundle of nerves. Mike was already there, a beer in hand, and he waved me over. "Hey, Josh. Thanks for coming," Mike said, his voice serious. "No problem. What's up?" I asked, taking a seat and ordering a drink. Mike took a deep breath. "I've been thinking a lot about you and Lily. I can see how hard you're trying, but I'm worried about you, man." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean, it's been months and you still seem, I don't know, unhappy. Is this really what you want?" Mike's eyes were filled with concern. I sighed, taking a sip of my beer. "I don't know, Mike. I love her, but it's so damn hard. Every time I think we're making progress, something happens, and all the doubts come rushing back." Mike nodded. "I get that, but you need to ask yourself if this is sustainable. If it's worth all the pain." His words hit me like a ton of bricks. I had been so focused on trying to make things work that I hadn't really stopped to think about what I wanted, what I needed. We finished our drinks in silence, and I left O'Malley's with a heavy heart. When I got back to the apartment, Lily was already home. She looked exhausted, her eyes red from crying. "Hey," she said softly. "Can we talk?" "Sure," I replied, my voice tense. We sat down on the couch, and she took a deep breath. "Josh, I know things have been tough. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I realize that maybe we're trying too hard to force something that's broken." Her words stung, but deep down, I knew she was right. "Lily, I love you, but I don't know if love is enough anymore." Tears filled her eyes, and she nodded. "I love you too, Josh, but I think we need to be honest with ourselves. Maybe it's time to let go." I felt a lump form in my throat. Yeah, maybe you're right. We sat there in silence for a long time, holding each other and crying. It was one of the hardest moments of my life, but it was also strangely liberating. We both knew that we had given it our all, but sometimes love just isn't enough. The next few days were a blur of packing and saying our goodbyes. It was painful, but there was also a sense of relief. We both needed to move on and find our own paths. On the day I moved out, I left my key on the counter and took one last look around the apartment. It was filled with memories, both good and bad, but I knew it was time to start fresh. As I walked out the door, I felt a mixture of sadness and hope. This wasn't the ending I had envisioned, but it was the right one for both of us. Now, as I sit in my new apartment, I reflect on everything that's happened. Life doesn't always go as planned, and sometimes the best thing you can do is let go and move forward. I've learned a lot about myself through this journey, and I'm stronger for it. For anyone going through a similar situation, remember that it's okay to let go. Sometimes, the hardest decisions are the ones that lead to the most growth. If you enjoyed this story, Please consider subscribing to our channel for more heartfelt narratives. Don't forget to like, comment, and share your thoughts and experiences. Your support means the world to us.